Hana watched the red warning lights flash across her training pod display as another simulation ended in failure. The holographic battlefield around her faded away, leaving only the cold metal walls of the training chamber and the disappointed silence that always followed her exercises. She pulled off her helmet and ran her fingers through her sweaty black hair, already knowing what would come next. The door hissed open and Instructor Veltar glided into the room on his 4 spider-like legs. The Zilani's blue skin seemed to shimmer with irritation as his large black eyes focused on her. His voice carried that familiar tone of barely controlled frustration when he spoke. "Cadet Lee, once again you have managed to turn a simple reconnaissance mission into a disaster zone." Veltar's translator made his alien words sound cold and mechanical. "Your unit suffered 70% casualties because you decided to engage the enemy instead of gathering intelligence." Hana stood up slowly from her training chair and faced her instructor. She had heard these words so many times before that she could almost say them along with him. The same complaints about following orders, the same lectures about military discipline, the same disappointed looks from everyone around her. "Sir, there were civilians in that building," Hana said quietly. "The simulation showed families trapped inside when the enemy started their bombardment. I could not just watch them die while we collected data." Veltar's antennae twitched, and what she had learned was the Zilani equivalent of an eye roll. Those were holographic projections. Cadet Lee, not real people, and saving them was not part of the mission parameters. Your job was to observe and report, nothing more. But if this was real, you would have gotten your entire squad killed for nothing. Veltar interrupted. "Military strategy is not about feelings. It is about following orders and achieving objectives, something you seem incapable of understanding." Hana bit back her response and simply nodded. There was no point in arguing anymore. She had tried to explain her thinking dozens of times before, but none of the instructors seemed to understand. They all saw the same thing when they looked at her: a human who could not follow simple instructions. "Your current ranking is 97th, out of 100 cadets." Veltar continued. "At this rate, you will not graduate with your class. Perhaps the human military would be better served if you considered a different career path." The words stung more than Hana wanted to admit. She had dreamed of joining the Galactic Defense Force since she was a child, back when humanity had first been invited to join the interstellar community. The idea of fighting alongside alien species to protect the galaxy had filled her with excitement and pride. Now, after 2 years at Stellar Command Academy, that dream felt further away than ever. "I understand, sir," Hana said, keeping her voice steady. "May I be dismissed?" Veltar waved one of his arms dismissively. "Go to your quarters and study the tactical manuals again. Perhaps if you read them enough times, some of the information will finally stick." Hana left the training chamber and walked through the Academy's long corridors toward the dormitory section. The station that housed Stellar Command Academy was massive, with sections designed for different alien species and their various environmental needs. The human section was relatively small, since Earth was still one of the newer members of the galactic community. As she walked, Hana passed groups of other cadets studying together or discussing their latest training exercises. Most of them were alien species she had learned to recognize over the past 2 years. The tall, graceful Vorthak with their gray skin and logical minds. The quick-moving Zilani-like instructor Veltar, who could process information faster than any other species. The mysterious Kristek, who shared a hive mind that let them coordinate perfectly in battle. Then there were the humans, and they fell into 2 clear groups. The successful ones like Park Do-hyun, who had adapted quickly to alien teaching methods and now ranked in the top 10 of the class. And the struggling ones like herself, who seemed unable to master the precise, calculated style of warfare that the Academy taught. Hana reached her dormitory room and found her roommate, Kim Minji, sitting at her desk reviewing holographic battle formations. Minji looked up as Hana entered and immediately saw the expression on her face. "Another bad training session?" Minji asked, though she already knew the answer. "Veltar thinks I should quit," Hana said, dropping onto her narrow bed. "Maybe he is right. Maybe I am just not cut out for this." Minji turned away from her studies and faced her friend. You know that is not true. You are one of the smartest people I know. You just think differently than they want us to. Differently wrong, apparently. Hana stared at the ceiling. Do you know what my biggest mistake was today? I tried to save simulated civilians during a reconnaissance mission, and that is a bad thing. According to every instructor here, yes. Hana sat up and looked at her friend. They keep telling us that emotions and personal feelings have no place in military strategy, that we need to be cold and logical like machines. Minji was quiet for a moment, then she spoke carefully. Maybe that works for other species, but humans are not like that. We cannot just turn off our emotions and follow orders without question. Try telling that to Park Do-yoon, Hana said bitterly. He seems to have figured it out just fine. As if summoned by her words, the dormitory's common area erupted in cheers and applause. Through their thin door, they could hear excited voices congratulating someone on another perfect training score. Hana did not need to look to know it was Do-yoon again, the golden boy of the human cadets, the one who proved that humans could excel at the academy if they just tried hard enough. He is different, Minji said quietly. Some people can adapt to any system, but that does not mean the system is right for everyone. Hana appreciated her friend's support, but it did not change her situation. Tomorrow there would be another training exercise, another chance to disappoint her instructors, another step closer to washing out of the program entirely. She had worked too hard to get here to give up now, but she was running out of ideas for how to improve. The door chimed and both girls looked up as someone requested entry. Minji activated the door controls and they were surprised to see Commander Thorne standing in the hallway. The senior human officer rarely visited the dormitory levels, and his presence immediately made both cadets nervous. Cadet Lee. Commander, Thorne said in his gruff voice, I need to speak with you privately. Minji quickly gathered her study materials and left the room, giving Hana an encouraging look as she passed. Commander Thorne entered and sat down in the room's single chair, his weathered face serious but not unkind. I have been reviewing your training records, he said without preamble. Your instructors think you are a failure, but I see something different. Hana blinked in surprise. Sir, tell me, cadet, why did you try to save those civilians in today's simulation? Because it was the right thing to do. Hana answered automatically, then caught herself. I mean, I know it was not part of the mission, but they would have died. And that bothered you? Yes, sir. Even though they were just holograms, the situation felt real to me. Commander Thorne nodded slowly. Most of your classmates would have followed orders exactly as given. They would have watched those civilians die and felt nothing because the mission parameters did not require them to intervene. Is that what I should have done? According to Academy doctrine, yes. Commander Thorne leaned forward. But Academy doctrine was written by species that think very differently than humans do. They value precision and predictability above all else. Hana felt confused. Are you saying I should keep failing? I am saying that what they call failure might actually be something else entirely. Commander Thorne stood up. Keep doing what you think is right, Cadet Lee, even if everyone else tells you it is wrong. Before Hana could ask what he meant, Commander, Thorne was gone, leaving her alone with more questions than answers. She lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling again, wondering if there was really any hope for someone like her in a place like this. Outside her window, the stars of the galaxy stretched endlessly in all directions, full of wonders and dangers that the Galactic Defense Force existed to protect. Somewhere out there, real people needed protection from real threats. And maybe, just maybe, the Academy's perfect tactical doctrine would not be enough when that time came. The emergency alarm that woke Lee Hana from deep sleep was unlike anything she had heard before. Instead of the regular training alerts, this was a deep, pulsing sound that seemed to vibrate through the station's metal walls and into her bones. She sat up quickly in her narrow bed, her heart already racing before her mind fully understood what was happening. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside her room, and she could hear the sound of running footsteps and shouting voices. Kim Minji burst through their door, still wearing her sleep clothes but carrying her emergency gear bag. All cadets to emergency stations immediately, Minji said, her voice tight with worry. This is not a drill. Something has happened at research. Station Omega-7. Hana grabbed her uniform and dressed quickly while Minji filled her in on what little information was spreading through the dormitory. A deep space archaeological expedition had been studying ancient ruins on a dead planet when they had discovered something terrible. The first distress signals had been confusing and contradictory, but the last transmission had been clear enough to terrify everyone who heard it. They found something that should have stayed buried, Minji said as they ran toward the assembly areas. Dr. Cho Hyunwoo's last message said that the containment had been breached and that they needed immediate military support. The main assembly hall was chaos when they arrived. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of different species were gathering in their designated areas, while instructors tried to restore order. The air was filled with the sounds of alien languages, as different species communicated in their own ways about the crisis. Instructor Veltar appeared in front of the human section, his usual calm demeanor replaced by obvious stress. His blue skin had taken on a darker shade that Hana had learned indicated fear among the Zilani people. Cadets, you will be briefed on the situation, and then the top-ranked students will be selected for the emergency response mission. Veltar's voice carried clearly over the noise. This is not a training exercise. Lives are at stake and only our best personnel will be deployed. Hana felt her stomach sink as she realized what that meant. With her ranking of 97th, she would be staying at the academy while others went to face whatever threat had emerged from the archaeological site. She would be watching from the sidelines again while the capable cadets handled the real work. A large holographic display activated above the assembly hall, showing the worried face of Admiral Kethvar, the Vorthak commander of the entire Galactic Defense Force. His gray skin looked pale even through the flickering projection, and his usually steady voice carried an edge of barely controlled panic. Students of Stellar Command Academy, the Admiral began. 3 hours ago, we lost contact with Research Station Omega-7 after receiving a series of increasingly disturbing transmissions. The display changed to show a recording from the research station. Dr. Cho Hyunwoo, a human archaeologist that Hana recognized from academy lectures, appeared on screen. His face was dirty and his eyes were wide with terror as he spoke rapidly into the camera. We found a containment chamber buried deep in the ruins, Dr. Cho said, looking over his shoulder nervously. The markings matched descriptions from the old archives. This is definitely Devourer technology, but we thought it was inactive. The recording flickered and jumped, showing brief glimpses of researchers running through corridors while alarms blared in the background. When Dr. Cho appeared again, there was blood on his forehead and his voice was shaking. It's learning, he said desperately. The creature is interfacing with our computer systems somehow. It's turning our own defenses against us. The automated security systems are hunting the survivors. The recording ended abruptly in static, and Admiral Kethvar's grim face returned to the display. The Devourers were apex predators that nearly destroyed galactic civilization over 10,000 years ago, the Admiral explained. They were not simple beasts, but highly intelligent hunters that could adapt to any environment and learn from any opponent. The combined forces of 50 species barely managed to contain the last of them. Hana felt a chill run through her body as she listened to the Admiral's words. She had read about the Devourers in her history classes, but they had seemed like ancient legends, not real threats that could suddenly return to threaten the modern galaxy. We are dispatching our top academy cadets along with experienced military personnel to investigate the situation at Omega-7. Admiral Kethvar continued. This will be extremely dangerous, and we are sending only our most capable and reliable students. The display showed a list of names, and Hana was not surprised to see Park Do-hyun at the very top. All of the selected cadets were ranked in the top 20 of their classes, representing the best and brightest that each species had to offer. They were the ones who followed orders perfectly, who executed textbook maneuvers with flawless precision, who never let emotions cloud their tactical judgment. As the selected cadets began, moving toward the departure bays, Hana felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Commander Thorne standing behind her, his weathered face even more serious than usual. Cadet Lee, you are being added to the mission roster, he said quietly. Hana stared at him in shock. Sir, I think there has been a mistake. My ranking is— I know exactly what your ranking is, Commander Thorne interrupted, and I also know that sometimes rankings do not tell the whole story. Before Hana could respond, she found herself being directed toward the departure bay along with the other selected cadets. Park Do-hyun looked surprised to see her joining the group, and she could see the question in his eyes. What was someone ranked 97th doing on such an important mission? The transport ships were sleek military vessels designed for rapid deployment to crisis situations. Hana found herself assigned to the secondary rescue ship along with a mixed group of cadets from different species. The primary ship carried Park Do-hyun and the other top-ranked students, while her ship was filled with support personnel and backup teams. As they traveled through hyperspace toward the coordinates of Research Station Omega-7, Hana tried to learn everything she could about their destination. The station was a deep space archaeological facility, designed to safely study artifacts from extinct civilizations. It had been built with the most advanced security systems available, specifically to contain any dangerous discoveries. The fact that something had broken out of those containments was terrifying enough, but the reports of the creature learning and adapting made it even worse. How do you fight an enemy that can turn your own weapons against you? How do you plan tactics against something that learns from every move you make? When they dropped out of hyperspace near Omega-7, the first thing Hana noticed was the silence. The research station hung motionless in the void, its lights dark and its communication arrays dead. It looked like a tomb drifting through space, and the lack of any signals from the survivors made everyone nervous. Park Do-hyun's voice came through the communication system from the primary ship, calm and professional as always. All teams, we are beginning our approach to the station. Maintain formation and prepare for potential hostile contact. The rescue ships moved toward the station in perfect military formation, their sensors scanning for signs of life or danger. Everything seemed normal until they were within a few kilometers of the docking bays, and then the station's defensive systems suddenly came online. Weapon turrets that should have been under friendly control began firing at the approaching rescue ships. The station's own defenses had been turned into a trap, just as Dr. Cho had warned in his final transmission. The creature inside had learned to use human technology against them. Evasive maneuvers, Park Do-hyun shouted over the communication channel. All ships scatter and find alternative approach vectors. But the Devourer had been studying their approach patterns, and it seemed to anticipate every move they made. The station's weapons tracked their ships with impossible accuracy, forcing the rescue teams to take cover behind nearby asteroids while they tried to figure out a new approach. It's like the station knows exactly what we're going to do, one of the pilots said over the radio. Every time we try a standard military approach, the defenses are ready for us. Hana listened to the confused reports from the other ships and felt a familiar feeling growing in her stomach. It was the same feeling she got during training exercises when she could see a solution that nobody else was considering. The same instinct that always got her in trouble for not following proper procedures. She activated her communication channel and spoke carefully. "This is Cadet Lee. I think the creature is using our own tactical database against us." "Explain." Park Do-hyun's voice was sharp with stress. "The station's computers contain copies of all standard military procedures," Hana said. "If the Devourer has accessed that information, it would know exactly how we're supposed to respond to this situation." There was silence on the communication channel for a long moment before Park Do-hyun responded. "All ships, prepare to execute Rescue Protocol 7. But sir," Hana said quickly, "if I'm right about the creature accessing our tactical data, then it already knows what Protocol 7 looks like. Cadet Lee, maintain communication discipline." Park Do-hyun's voice carried a warning. "We will follow established procedures," Hana wanted to argue, but she forced herself to stay quiet. She was just a low-ranked cadet, and this was the explosion that destroyed the primary rescue ship, lit up the darkness of space like a dying star. Lee Hana watched in horror through her ship's viewport as the vessel carrying Park Do-hyun and the Academy's top cadets was torn apart by the station's defensive weapons. The beautiful formation they had maintained, the perfect execution of Protocol 7, had meant nothing against an enemy that knew every move they would make. Primary ship is down. The pilot of Hana's vessel shouted over the communication system. We're detecting escape pods, but the station's defenses are targeting them too. Through the chaos of emergency signals and panicked voices, Hana could hear Park Do-hyun's strained voice coming from one of the escape pods. All remaining ships, maintain distance from the station. Do not attempt rescue until we can establish a safe approach vector. But even as he spoke, the station's weapons were systematically destroying the escape pods one by one. The devourer inside was not just defending itself. It was learning from each attack, getting better at predicting where the survivors would try to go and how they would try to escape. We have to do something, Kim Minji said from the seat next to Hana. We can't just watch them die. The senior officer commanding their ship, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, was trying to coordinate with the other surviving vessels when the station's tractor beams suddenly activated. Instead of pulling their ships toward the weapons, the beams were pulling them toward what looked like a damaged docking bay. It's trying to capture us, Hayes said grimly. All ships, full power to engines, break free from the tractor beams, but the more they fought against the beams, the stronger they seemed to become. The station was not just trying to capture them. Randomly, it was forcing them to dock at specific locations where the devourer could control their entry. Within minutes, all 3 surviving rescue ships found themselves locked into docking bays deep inside the station. Stay together and follow standard boarding procedures, Hayes ordered as his team prepared to enter the station. We stick to the tactical manual and we might get out of this alive. Hana wanted to point out that the tactical manual was exactly what had gotten them into this trap, but she kept quiet and followed the others into the dark corridors of Research Station Omega-7. The station's internal lighting was either completely dark or flickering with emergency power, creating strange shadows that seemed to move when nobody was looking. The rescue teams moved through the station in perfect military formation, just as they had been trained. They maintained proper spacing, checked corners according to protocol, and communicated using standard hand signals. Everything they did was exactly what the tactical manual recommended for hostile territory, and that was exactly what the devourer was counting on. The first attack came when they reached the main research level. The corridor they were moving through, suddenly filled with poisonous gas that the station's life support system began pumping through the air vents. The gas was not lethal, but it was designed to force them to use their emergency breathing equipment and slow down their movement. Gas masks on, continue advance according to plan, Hayes ordered, and his team obeyed instantly. But as they moved forward wearing their breathing gear, automated defense turrets dropped from the ceiling and began firing at them. The turrets had been programmed to target the specific locations where soldiers would take cover when advancing through a corridor under fire. Every piece of cover that the tactical manual recommended was already being targeted by the station's weapons. Fall back to secondary positions, Hayes shouted, but the secondary positions were already being targeted too. Within minutes, half of their team was wounded, and they were forced to retreat to a secure area near the docking bays. The other rescue teams had suffered similar losses, and their careful military formations had been torn apart by an enemy that seemed to know exactly what they were going to do before they did it. This is impossible, Lieutenant Commander Hayes said as he treated a wounded team member. It's like the creature can read our minds. Not our minds, Hana said quietly. Our training manuals. She explained her theory again, how the devourer had accessed the station's computer systems and learned every standard military tactic that the rescue teams might use. Every formation, every advance pattern, every response to different types of attacks, it was all in the databases that the creature now controlled. So what do you suggest, Cadet? Hayes asked with barely concealed frustration. That we throw away centuries of military science and just make things up as we go. Maybe, Hana said, surprising everyone, including herself. Before Hayes could respond, they heard a sound echoing through the corridors that made everyone's blood run cold. It was not the sound of machinery or weapons, but something organic and intelligent. The devourer was moving through the station, hunting for them, and it sounded like it was enjoying itself. We need to find the survivors from the research station, Hayes said, trying to regain control of the situation. Intelligence suggests they might be holed up in the secure laboratories on Level 7. But when they tried to reach Level 7 using the standard approach routes, they found that every path was blocked or trapped. The Devourer had turned the entire station into a maze designed to channel them toward specific locations where it could eliminate them easily. Kim Minji was badly injured when she triggered a trap that the manual said should have been safe to approach. As Hana knelt beside her wounded friend, she felt anger building inside her chest. Not the cold, calculated anger that the Academy taught them to control, but the hot, emotional fury of someone watching their friends suffer. "This is not working," Hana said, standing up and facing Lieutenant Commander Hayes. "Every time we follow procedures, people get hurt. Cadet Lee, you are out of line," Hayes warned. "Am I?" Hana's voice was getting louder. "How many more people have to die before we admit that our perfect tactical manual is useless against this thing?" She looked around at the surviving members of their team, alien and human alike, all of them wounded or exhausted from fighting an enemy that stayed one step ahead of their every move. These were good soldiers who had trained for years to become the best military officers in the galaxy, and they were being systematically destroyed by a creature that had learned to beat them at their own game. "I think Cadet Lee might be right," said Yoon Seojun, a Christic drone who had been separated from his hive mind when the station's systems were compromised. "Without my connection to the collective, I am thinking as an individual for the first time, and these individual thoughts are not following the patterns that our training taught us." "You want us to abandon everything we learned?" Hayes asked. "I want us to do things that are not in any training manual," Hana said. "Things that the creature cannot predict because they make no tactical sense." Before Hayes could argue, the communication system crackled to life with a transmission from deep inside the station. It was Park Do-hyun's voice, weak but alive, calling from somewhere near the station's central core. "Any surviving rescue personnel, this is Team Leader Park." His voice was strained with pain. "We have found some of the research station survivors, but we are trapped in the central laboratory complex. The creature has us surrounded, and our ammunition is running low." Hayes immediately began planning a rescue operation using standard military tactics, but Hana was not listening anymore. She was thinking about all the times her training instructors had criticized her for making emotional decisions, for breaking formation to help people, for doing things that the manual said were wrong. Maybe it was time to do everything wrong, on purpose. "I have an idea," Hana said, "but nobody is going to like it." She explained her plan to the surviving team members, and just as she had predicted, none of them liked it. Her idea involved splitting up instead of staying together, making noise instead of staying quiet, and deliberately walking into obvious traps while ignoring the safe routes that tactical doctrine recommended. "That is the most illogical military strategy I have ever heard," Hayes said. "Good." Hana replied, "That means the Devourer will not expect it either." The debate over her plan was interrupted by another sound echoing through the corridors, closer, this time. The creature was still hunting them, and their safe hiding place would not stay safe much longer. They had to make a decision. Commander Thorne's voice suddenly came through their emergency communication channel, broadcast to all surviving personnel throughout the station. "All rescue teams, command authority is being transferred to Cadet Lee, effective immediately." There was stunned silence as everyone tried to process what they had just heard. A cadet ranked 97th in her class was being given command of the entire rescue operation, while senior officers with decades of experience were told to follow her orders. "Cadet Lee," Commander Thorne's voice continued, "the Academy's best and brightest have failed using conventional tactics. Perhaps it is time to try unconventional ones." Hana looked around at the faces of her new team, human and alien alike, all of them wounded and scared, but still willing to follow her into whatever insane plan she had in mind. These were soldiers who had spent years learning to follow orders without question, and now she was asking them to question everything they had ever been taught. "Are you with me?" she asked, one by one. They not the time to chow. Lee Hana's first order as mission commander made everyone think she had lost her mind completely. Instead of organizing her teams into proper military formations, she told them to split up and move through the station randomly, making as much noise as possible while deliberately triggering every trap they could find. This goes against every basic principle of tactical operations, Lieutenant Commander Hayes said, but he was already checking his equipment and preparing to follow her orders. That's the point, Hana replied, watching the confused expressions on the faces of her mixed alien and human team. The Devourer has learned to counter every basic principle we know, so we need to do things that no military computer would ever recommend. She divided the remaining rescue personnel into 3 groups, each one containing a mix of species and skill sets that made no sense according to standard doctrine. Instead of putting the strongest fighters together or grouping specialists with similar training, she deliberately created teams that would be unpredictable in their reactions and decision-making. Team 1, I want you to head toward the central core but take the longest possible route. Stop to investigate every room you pass, and if you see something that looks dangerous, go toward it instead of away from it. Hana's orders sounded like madness to everyone listening. Team 2, find the station's main computer systems and try to break as many things as possible. Do not try to fix anything or restore normal operations, Yoon Seojun. The Christek drone, who had been cut off from his hive mind, raised one of his 4 arms. What about Team 3? Team 3 comes with me to rescue Park Do-hyun and the survivors in the central laboratories. Hana said, but we're going to do it in the most inefficient way possible. As the teams prepared to move out, Hana pulled Kim Minji aside despite her friend's injuries. I need you to stay here and coordinate communications, but I want you to send false information over the radio channels. False information. Minji looked confused. Tell everyone we're doing exactly the opposite of what we're actually doing, Hana explained. If the Devourer is monitoring our communications, I want it to be confused about our real plans. The first phase of Hana's unconventional strategy began with Team 1 making their way toward the central core while doing everything wrong on purpose. Instead of moving quietly, they stomped through the corridors and talked loudly about their mission. Instead of checking for traps carefully, they deliberately set off every alarm and security system they encountered. The results were immediate and shocking. The station's automated defenses, which had been so deadly when targeting proper military formations, seemed confused by the chaotic and unpredictable movement patterns. Weapons that had been programmed to fire at specific locations found nothing to target when soldiers refused to take cover in the logical positions. It's working, came the excited voice of Team 1's leader over the radio. The creature's defenses are not responding properly to our random movements. Team 2 was having similar success in the computer systems area. Instead of trying to restore normal operations or defend against the Devourer's control, they were systematically breaking everything they could find. Every time they destroyed a computer system or severed a connection, the creature's ability to predict and counter their movements seemed to decrease. Hana led Team 3 through the station using a route that made no tactical sense whatsoever. They went up when they should have gone down, took detours through dangerous areas when safe paths were available, and stopped to help wounded research station personnel even when it slowed down their mission. The Devourer, which had been so successful at anticipating their every move, began making mistakes for the first time. Traps that should have caught them were triggered too early or too late. Automated defenses fired at empty spaces where military doctrine said soldiers should be standing. I can hear it getting frustrated, said Nam Ji-won, a Zilani cadet who had initially questioned Hana's methods. Its hunting calls are becoming more aggressive and less calculated. As they moved deeper into the station, Hana began to understand something important about their enemy. The Devourer was not just a perfect predator, it was a perfect student. It learned by observing patterns and predicting behavior based on logical analysis. But human behavior, especially emotional human behavior, often defied logic completely. When they reached the area where Park Do-hyun and the other survivors were trapped, Hana made another decision that horrified her military-trained teammates. Instead of planning a careful rescue operation, she simply walked up to the sealed laboratory doors and knocked loudly. "This is Lee Hana," she called out. "We're here to rescue you, but we need you to do exactly what we tell you, even if it sounds crazy." Park Do-hyun's voice came through the door speakers, weak but alive. "Hana, thank the ancestors you're here, but be careful. The creature has been studying our every move, I know," Hana said. "That's why we're going to stop making moves that it can study." She explained her plan to the trapped survivors, and even through the door she could hear their shocked responses. She was asking them to abandon their defensive positions and run through the station's corridors without any protection, relying on chaos and unpredictability instead of tactics and planning. "That is suicide," Park Do-hyun said. "No, suicide is continuing to do things that the creature expects us to do." Hana replied, "Trust me, I know this sounds insane, but conventional tactics have already failed." When the laboratory doors finally opened, Hana saw the cost of following conventional military doctrine. Park Do-hyun and his team were exhausted and wounded from hours of fighting an enemy that countered their every tactical decision. The research station survivors with them looked terrified but grateful to see rescue teams. Dr. Cho Hyun-woo, the human archaeologist who had sent the first distress signals, grabbed Hana's arm as soon as he saw her. "You have to understand what we're dealing with here. This creature does not just hunt. It learns and adapts to every strategy we use against it." "We figured that out," Hana said. "That's why we're not using strategies anymore." Her rescue plan was the most militarily unsound operation anyone had ever seen. Instead of forming protective formations around the survivors, she had everyone spread out randomly. Instead of taking the safest route to the docking bays, she led them through the most dangerous parts of the station. Instead of moving quietly, she encouraged everyone to make noise and act unpredictably. Park Do-hyun, despite his injuries, tried to argue with her methods. "Hana, this goes against everything we learned at the academy." "Everything we learned at the academy is in the station's computer databases," she replied. "The creature has studied all of it and learned to counter all of it, but it cannot counter things that make no sense." As they moved through the station, something remarkable began to happen. The Devourer's attacks became less coordinated and more desperate. The creature that had seemed omniscient and unstoppable was now making obvious mistakes, falling for simple distractions and failing to predict their movements. "It's like watching a chess master try to play against someone who does not know the rules," observed Yoon Seojin, who was discovering that individual thought was very different from hive mind coordination. "The creature knows every possible chess move, but it cannot understand why we are not playing chess." The breakthrough came when they encountered the Devourer directly for the first time. The creature was massive and terrifying, with technology integrated into its biological form that allowed it to interface with the station's systems. But when it tried to corner them using the station's layout, Hana did something that no military manual would ever recommend. She walked directly toward it, not to attack, not to negotiate, but simply because it was the most illogical thing she could think of doing. The creature, which had been prepared for every possible tactical response, was completely unprepared for someone who simply ignored all tactical considerations. "What are you doing?" Park Do-hyun shouted. "Something stupid," Hana called back, "and that's exactly why it's going to work." The Devourer hesitated for the first time since the rescue teams had arrived at the station. Its perfect predictive abilities meant nothing when faced with behavior that had no predictable pattern. For a moment that felt like hours, the creature and the human cadet stared at each other across the corridor. Then Hana smiled and waved at it like she was greeting a friend, and the Devourer's confusion was so complete that it actually backed away from her. The apex predator that had terrorized the galaxy was retreating from a low-ranked academy cadet who refused to act afraid of it. "Everyone move to the docking bays now," Hana ordered. "But take different routes, make noise, and if you see the creature, do something friendly instead of something tactical." As her teams moved toward escape, Hana realized that they had discovered something important. The Devourer was not truly unbeatable, it was simply too good at learning conventional patterns. But humans, especially emotional and unpredictable humans, did not always follow conventional patterns. The final confrontation was still ahead of them, but for the first time since arriving at the station, Hana felt like they might actually survive this encounter. The key was not to fight better than the creature, but to fight in ways that it could not understand or predict. Sometimes the best military strategy was to have no military strategy at all. Lihana stood alone in the central core of Research Station Omega-7, facing the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever known, and she was completely calm for the first time since arriving at the station. Behind her, the surviving rescue teams and research station personnel were making their way to the docking bays using the chaotic evacuation plan she had given them. Ahead of her, the Devourer waited in the heart of the station's computer systems, surrounded by technology it had learned to control perfectly. The creature was even more terrifying up close than she had imagined. Its original biological form had been enhanced with cybernetic implants that allowed it to interface directly with computer networks, and its ancient intelligence gleamed in eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. This was a being that had once brought the entire galaxy to its knees, and it was studying her with the same intense focus it had once used to hunt entire species to extinction. "You are different from the others," the Devourer said, its voice emerging from speakers throughout the core chamber. "Your tactical patterns do not match anything in the databases I have accessed." "That's because I don't have tactical patterns," Hana said, walking closer to the creature despite every instinct telling her to run. "I'm probably the worst military student in the entire academy." The Devourer tilted its massive head, confused by her casual tone. "You speak as if failure is something to be proud of." "Sometimes it is," Hana said, sitting down on the floor in front of the creature like she was having a conversation with a friend. "Can I tell you about my worst training exercise?" The question clearly caught the Devourer off guard. It had been prepared for threats, negotiations, or desperate pleas for mercy, but not for casual conversation about academy failures. Its cybernetic implants flickered as it tried to process this unexpected social interaction. "You wish to discuss your military incompetence before I terminate you?" the creature asked. "I wish to discuss why my military incompetence might be more dangerous than you think." Hana replied, 3 months ago, I was given a simple reconnaissance mission. Observe enemy positions and report back without engaging. Basic stuff that any first-year cadet should be able to handle." The Devourer listened with the intense focus of a being that had spent millennia learning from every piece of information it encountered. But when I got to the observation point, I saw enemy forces preparing to attack a civilian shelter that was not mentioned in our mission briefing. Hana continued, "According to military doctrine, I should have observed and reported as ordered. The civilian casualties were not my responsibility." "Correct," the Devourer said. "Unnecessary emotional attachment to non-combatants reduces operational efficiency. That's exactly what my instructors said when I failed the exercise." Hana agreed. "But here's the thing. I couldn't just watch those families die, so I broke radio silence, abandoned my observation post, and attacked the enemy forces directly." The creature's eyes gleamed with interest. "A tactically unsound decision that resulted in mission failure." "The worst mission failure in Academy history," Hana said proudly. "I lost my entire simulated squad, failed to complete the reconnaissance objective, and caused a diplomatic incident when my unauthorized attack triggered a larger battle." "And yet you speak of this failure as an achievement," Hana stood up and began walking around the chamber, not moving toward or away from the Devourer, just wandering aimlessly while she talked. "Because 3 days later, we got intelligence reports that proved my attack had actually prevented a massacre. The civilian shelter I tried to protect contained over 2,000 refugees, including children. The Devourer's cybernetic systems processed this information rapidly. The tactical outcome was irrelevant to the strategic benefit." "Exactly," Hana said. "My failure saved lives that would have been lost if I had followed orders." "Perfectly. But according to every military computer in the galaxy, what I did was wrong." She could see the creature struggling to reconcile this contradiction. Its entire existence was built on learning optimal strategies and predicting logical outcomes, but human decision-making often produced illogical results that somehow worked better than logical ones. "You are attempting to confuse my cognitive processes," the Devourer said. "I'm trying to show you what humans are really like." Hana replied, We don't just fail at following proper tactics, we fail so beautifully that our failures become victories, she began telling the creature about other human military disasters throughout history. Battles where human forces had made terrible strategic decisions that should have led to defeat, but instead resulted in unexpected victories. She talked about emotional decisions that defied logic, desperate gambits that succeeded against all odds, and the strange human ability to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat through sheer stubbornness and refusal to accept logical outcomes. The Devourer's systems began showing signs of strain as it tried to process and categorize all of this contradictory information. Its cybernetic implants flickered more frequently, and its voice carried a note of frustration when it spoke. These examples do not follow predictable patterns. It said, "How can I learn to counter strategies that are fundamentally flawed yet somehow effective?" "You can't," Hana said simply. "That's what makes humans dangerous. We're too stupid to be beaten by superior intelligence." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of explosions echoing through the station as the evacuation ships began their departure. The Devourer's attention immediately shifted to the tactical situation, but when it tried to coordinate the station's defenses, it found that its perfect predictions were failing again. "Your rescue teams are not following any recognizable evacuation procedures," the creature said, its voice carrying genuine confusion. "Their movements appear random and inefficient." "Because they are random and inefficient," Hana agreed, "but they're also impossible for you to predict or counter." She watched as the creature's frustration grew with each failed attempt to anticipate her team's movements. The Devourer had learned every military tactic in the galactic databases, but those databases had been created by logical minds that assumed warfare should follow rational patterns. Humans, especially desperate humans, did not always follow rational patterns. "I should terminate you immediately," the Devourer said. "Your continued existence serves no logical purpose." "Then why don't you?" Hana asked. The question hung in the air between them as the creature struggled to find an answer. Its perfect predatory instincts told it to eliminate the threat, but its enhanced intelligence was fascinated by the puzzle she represented. How do you kill someone who refuses to act like prey? How do you hunt someone who walks directly toward you instead of running away? "You are attempting psychological manipulation," the creature finally said. "I'm attempting to have a conversation," Hana replied. "When was the last time you talked to someone instead of hunting them?" The question seemed to trigger something in the creature's ancient memories. For a moment, its voice carried a note of something that might have been loneliness. "The Devourers were social creatures before we became apex predators," it said slowly. "We had conversations, debates, philosophical discussions about the nature of existence and our place in the cosmic order. What happened to all that?" "Perfection happened," the creature said. "We became so efficient at survival that we forgot everything else. We learned to counter every threat, predict every outcome, control every variable, and in doing so, we became isolated from all other forms of life." Hana felt a surge of understanding that surprised her. "You became so good at being predators that you stopped being people." The Devourer's cybernetic systems flickered more rapidly as it processed this insight. The pursuit of perfect tactics eliminated the imperfect elements that made existence meaningful, like emotions, and friendship and making bad decisions for good reasons, Hana said. "Yes," the creature said, and for the first time its voice carried genuine sadness. "We achieved perfect survival at the cost of everything that made survival worthwhile." The station's emergency system suddenly activated as the final evacuation ships prepared to depart. Warning lights flashed throughout the core chamber as automated systems announced that the facility's self-destruct sequence had been initiated. The research station was going to destroy itself to prevent the Devourer from escaping. "You should flee," the creature said to Hana. "Your evacuation ships are departing and I cannot guarantee your safety if you remain here." "I could," Hana said, "but that would be the logical thing to do, and we've established that I'm not very good at logical decisions." She walked closer to the creature and sat down again, this time right next to its massive form. The devourer could have killed her instantly, but instead it seemed genuinely puzzled by her behavior. "Why do you choose to remain?" it asked. "Because you're not really a monster." Hana said, "You're just someone who got so afraid of failing that you forgot how to live, and I know what that feels like." The creature's ancient eyes focused on her with an intensity that should have been terrifying. "You would sacrifice your life for a being that has caused immeasurable destruction. I would sacrifice my life for a friend who needs help remembering what it means to be imperfect." Hana replied, though I. Self-destruct countdown continued in the background as the devourer processed this final contradiction.